Hello, welcome to the Salty Witches podcast. I am your host, and so is Mike. And I'm just gonna shut up.
You have like early morning voice. You did that. You're like, hello. Like, there was like this like rasp to your voice. So yes,
Obviously
for
we have a
our
guest.
yes,
Welcome,
yes,
welcome,
hello,
Jasper.
yes. Those of you
Hello.
who tuning in for a time now will probably recognize Jasper either through face or through voice. Um, yeah, and we're excited to have Jasper back on the podcast. It's been a while. God, it's been like at least a year, I think.
Sure has. Sure has.
Yeah, since we had you on, and you're an excellent guest to have on for this episode's topic because we're going to be kind of discussing or kind of going back into that conversation on really on LGBTQIA plus identity and the practice of witchcraft and other alternative spiritualities. Um, and I was just kind of talking a little bit before we hit record, that there's a part of me that feels conflict around this topic. And I guess what I mean by that is not that I have any there's no conflict around discussing this really either of these things, but I think there's this part of me that still struggles because it is Pride Month, right? And that's, again, I should clarify, that's one of the reasons we're doing this is because it is Pride Month, in certain areas anyway. But there's this part of me that kind of like I want to continue to have this discussion, but then there's another part of me that kind of feels like, God, do we have to keep having this discussion? Because, and it has nothing to do with the witchcraft connection. It has to do with the when is everyone else in the world just going to pull their heads out of their asses and realize that it's okay for people to be LGBTQIA plus? Like, what's the fucking problem? But until that happens, we need to have these discussions, and we need to focus these things. So anyway, so with that
Yeah.
being said, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm in complete agreement, especially after yesterday when I was so are y'all familiar with Susie Eddie Izzard? Eddie Izzard?
Yes, yeah, I love Izzard. Yeah.
So Susie, I was reading the post they made last year about like wanting to use exclusively she, her pronouns, but they're okay with like he, him, obviously because of the performance thing.
Yeah.
Uh, and I was reading the comments in the comment section on Twitter, which is always fun, and the amount of hate that Susie was getting. But then I clicked on a profile in particular, and it was interesting because this person claimed to be a psychic medium witch, but was super conservative. And I'm like, you are a walking contradiction because witchcraft, according to our friends over at Southern Bramble, is inherently queer. It is queer. And so, like, to be a conservative and it's like being like when we talked about Christian witches who try to actually live by the doctrine in the Bible and still be a witch. And it's like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You just do that.
Yeah. Not if they're really doing it to the letter of the Bible.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it boggled my mind because how can you be a witch or any kind of magical practitioner for that matter, and be any kind of conservative or anti-LGBT. It doesn't make sense because like to be a witch is to protect those types of individuals. Like your job is to protect the people who can't protect themselves. And not saying like members of our community can't protect themselves. I'm saying that we still need we need all the help we can get, you know?
Yeah. And I think it's an issue again. I think really it comes down to allyship, and because there are so many people within the occult community, the pagan community, the witchcraft community, that are they're trying to live this way. They're trying, they're claiming these titles, they're doing these things, but then they're not really doing the work behind that, as far as showing up and being a good person, not even being a good witch, just being a good person, not being a hateful bigot, so that's absolutely. I also think that are you gonna add anything at all to our episode? Okay. You're good. I was gonna say, think about something to say. Think about something you can say.
Oh, I love your nails, Mike.
And
Sorry,
so
I'm just now seeing your fingers. I was like, oh, look at your nails, and yours too, Austin. Yours is always good.
yeah, I went with something like a light pastel, something kind of for like the spring slash summer season. And you cannot
Hmm.
see them, but I have tiny little monstera leaves on them because I'm they're like, oh yeah, yeah, they're like super, yeah, they're not gonna show up. Yes, because I've this year my goal, as just a quick aside, my goal this year was to cultivate a new hobby. And as Austin has told me, I've become a plant daddy. Um,
Indoor
so
plant daddy.
this indoor plant daddy, yeah,
I'm outdoor plant daddy.
it's too hot here to deal with outdoor plants. It's awful. But indoor plants, yeah, I'm looking at 2 shelves that I have now with plants, and so I'm very happy with them. They are my children. Um,
Uh,
anyway,
yeah,
so
you
back
and
and
Theo are besties all over again because that is his hobby too.
nice, very cool. I love that. I love that. It's very
Um,
calming. So I was gonna say real quick, sorry, I'm cutting you off, but real quick. So back to the whole idea about like this idea you mentioned, you talked, you saw this thing where you were looking at like this uber conservative asshole garbage person who was also claiming to be a witch and all this other stuff, hating on Susie, right? And it was like I think that one of the other things, it's not just about the responsibilities that witches have to be kind of like I'm going to use like I'm going to pull a term from again like religion, which makes me want to barf. But it is kind of part of our responsibility to be, in some sense, kind of be like shepherds to humanity. Like we are supposed to be wardens of the earth, shepherds to humanity. We're supposed to take these things seriously. We're supposed to live in this way, right? So that's one place where they're obviously failing this kind of person that you see here on commenting on Twitter. But I think if you look at the idea, the concept, and you mentioned like Southern Bramble, that the guys on Southern Bramble. So I shouldn't say guys, the people behind Southern Bramble, who we're talking about that. And I think if you go deeper, if you look at the deeper, the core, the spirit, the philosophy behind witchcraft in particular, witchcraft has always been about taking what other people define as normal. Like what does that even mean anyway, right? Like what the hell is normal, right? But taking that and really kind of deliberately kind of flipping that on its head, to
Mhm.
take a look at what society commonly values, right? What the people in the village are commonly about, and choosing to look beyond that, to go deeper into that, to flip that over to see if there's a way of coming to an alternate kind of truth, particularly when those values are messed up, right? Like we live in a society now that is, we are so uh we are so controlled and influenced by greed and hate and fear. Fear is a huge one, right? And as witches, part of the personal work we're supposed to be doing, the growth that we're doing, is looking into those things like why fear? Why do I need to be fearful, right? Because I really truly believe fear is a huge component of the hatred that we see for the LGBTQIA plus community, right? It's these people who just have never had any exposure, they've never had any experience. They're foolish enough to believe other people who are fearful and hateful, right? And so they allow fear to kind of kindle that bigotry in them. And so it's unfortunate to me to see these people claiming to be witches when clearly they haven't really done any of the real personal work behind that. Because if you're really doing that work, you're really earning that title, you're not going to be carrying a lot of hatred and fear and a lot of that foolishness in you. You're not going to be carrying that with you. Or if you do have some of that, it's going to be justified. It's going to be based off of actual lived experience and not just the crap that you read on a 4chan article written by some incel or some conservative asshole Christian Republican from the southern states who is probably paying male prostitutes on the side. So I mean,
We,
it's
we hear you,
yeah,
Ladybug Graham. We
exactly.
hear you.
It's so funny. Where was I the other day? I was somewhere the other day. I was walking out of. Oh, I went to do coffee with a friend, and he has this really nice garden area in front of his house. And I was walking out, and there was a ladybug on the leaf. for some for some reason, Lindsay Ladybugs Graham popped into my head, and so I was walking by, and I was like, "Oh, hey, Lindsay, how you doing?"
I mean, I can't think of Ladybug without thinking that. But Austin, you were going to say something. What were you going to say?
I forgot.
No, you
Oh,
No,
No, you didn't.
I forgot.
bring it back. Well, so Austin, you have an interesting voice for this episode as well, because you are
I mean, you have an interesting voice anyway. Like, I
was-
love it.
I don't know where I was gonna go with this. You have an interesting voice for this episode because
No, I have a question for Austin because Austin, you grew up. I wouldn't say you grew up, but you did a lot of fundamental things in when you were a Wiccan.
they're
I
right.
mean,
You haven't grown up.
but what I mean by that is like in religions like Wicca, I say religion. I'm sorry. In
Religion.
Wicca's a religion, yeah.
in religions like Wicca, there's very much this duality of like, male, female. It doesn't, at least from my research and readings, it doesn't really give room for queer, androgynous, non-binary individuals as much as like like the people might, but the faith itself does not. It's very Lord and Lady, you know, male, female, dark, light, sun, moon, which I love that as much as anybody else, but there has to be this like the reason like when I was like coming into, witchcraft and learning why I veered away from Wicca is because of that very purpose. Like, what would you say, how could people in those faiths maybe work to incorporate more safe spaces for folks who are like LGBT non-binary in particular, or like um, don't claim any kind of a gender. Sorry, that was a very long-winded ask.
No, you're good. No, you positioned that well. That's
So it again, it all depends on, like you said, the individuals themselves. My high priestess had no problem with that. My high priestess very much believed that the masculine, the feminine, androgyny was all within us and around us. And so instead of her putting it in terms like the goddess within you and the god, she put it in terms of the creative aspects or the projective or active aspects. And that's one of the reasons why, though you're not a fan of them, that's one of the reasons why I like Thorn Mooney. Is Thorn Mooney and individuals like Thumper Forge as well, because Thumper Forge is also a Gardnerian,
yeah.
have actively worked to try and bring that into Wicca. And as Wicca is and should be a living tradition, even if it's Gardnerian, even if it's the OG Gardnerian or Alexandrian, there's core sets of tenets and beliefs, but it should be able to breathe and live and evolve. And we actually, Hemlock, our customer, Everin, yes.
Okay.
We had so Everin, if you're listening, hello, hi.
So sorry, we just used your name on our podcast.
Oh, sorry. Yes, we had we have a mutual, and they and I were actually talking about this when they had left, and they, COVID had hit and everything had shut down, and they were still in a pursuit of trying to find a coven, and it was actually and find a coven that actually approved of gender non-binary, trans, like, and actually encouraged and welcomed that. And they're the ones who actually said Thorn Mooney and a few other well-known Wiccan quote unquote leaders or priests, priestesses were kind of spearheading this. So as we have grown, we have seen the acceptance of that. And even if we look at individuals like Gardner, like Saunders, like, any of these other prevalent figures in Wicca, we all can still see that there was some gender fuckery going on. We can see that. that's actually one of the reasons that you work skyclad, is because the belief is that it's just a body. This is just your flesh prison.
Prison.
Yes, flesh prison.
Hmm.
We didn't say flesh prison, but this is your flesh suit. This is your flesh suit. And so within, we are all divine creatures and beings and children
Sorry.
of this creative and projective aspect of the universe. And if you want to label that as masculine, feminine, cool, go for it. But when you do actually research and study certain deities, there are some that, like, really prime example, the Morrigan is genderqueer as fuck.
Lucifer.
She holds fairly masculine views and energy, but she also likes to be told she's pretty, you know, and has some of those stereotypical feminine leanings as well as stereotypical male leanings. But then you have other individuals, just keeping in with the Celtic pantheon. You have individuals like Lou or the Dogda, who are all about like comfort and like having fun and the typical stuff that you would associate with a more feminine energy. Like the Dogda likes staying home, like stirring his cauldron. That's what the Dogda did.
Well, I don't think
It's very Empress energy, yeah, like the Empress Tarot.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think a lot of those things also are going to be those ideas, and we see this. This is still very much the case, right? And taking this discussion away from witchcraft and paganism, you know, I think different cultures have different standards for what is considered masculine and or feminine.
Yes.
Right. I mean, you'll see the behavior of, say, like men in the Middle East, right, who are actually very physically affectionate, straight men in the Middle East who are very physically affectionate with each other. I mean, in ways that like your average cis hetero dude bro in the US is going to be like, oh my God, look at those two gay dudes. It's like neither of those guys are gay. This is just a cultural norm. This is how they function, you know? And so, so I don't know. So I think a lot of what we see associated with some of these pagan deities and paganistic practices also is rooted within the beliefs and just the customs of the culture in which they originate. I have to address a couple of things. I don't hate Wicca. Very unfortunate experiences with Wiccans. And yes, and there are cool Wiccans out there like Thorn Mooney and Thumperforge, and you know, and there are a few others, right? And you know, so it's not Wicca that's the issue. Because I personally, going back at least with what I'm familiar with Wicca, I cannot think Gerald Gardner and Alexander Saunders. I don't think that you could really be more queer than those two were. And I don't mean queer as in the sense that they had sex with other male identifying people. I mean,
but they did.
But Saunders for sure, who I've heard in years since has kind of a reputation for being, or had a reputation for being a homophobe. Dude was partially responsible for founding the fairy tradition. You don't get any gayer than fairy Wicca.
Partially
responsible. He worked with Cora and what's his name?
No, Victor and Cora Anderson were very Wicca's their thing.
Oh, okay. Oh, they worked with it was oh my God, Robert. There was a connection there somehow.
Robert Cochrane.
Cochrane, yes, that's who that was. The connection was. It wasn't Saunders. Okay, so I got that one wrong.
Robert Cochrane was more connected to Gerald Gardner because of Doreen Valiente.
I was mostly making the joke that y'all made back at the podcast where you called him Cock Ring by accident.
Yes.
Yeah. Robert Cochrane. We love him so much. Yeah. But it's just very simple. Like, if you think about it, half the voices that lead the witchcraft community today are women or a variation of queer. Like, it's just the facts. Like, you don't see very many straight authors out there. I mean, they exist, but they're not that many, you know?
I'm like pulling a list.
Sorry, I'm getting a drink.
Jason Miller, Jason Mankey,
you're having to think that hard though. Do you know what I mean?
Paul Beckett is, yeah.
Whereas we can list Keldon, Storm Fairy Wolf, Devin Hunter, Matt R.
Yeah, that list of names, that list for if you look at people within the LGBTQIA plus spectrum who have contributed to witchcraft, not just contemporarily but historically, that list is much longer. At least as far as like people that are kind of like that come to mind, people that are like like in the zeitgeist of what's happening with it.
Well, Gerald Gardner was bisexual.
So you mentioned
so was Crowley.
You mentioned that a moment ago,
and so was Saunders.
And so was Saunders. You mentioned those things a moment ago, and even I just a moment ago was saying like you couldn't really be more queer than these men. But I think that given the era and again the culture that these two men kind of originated in, I think that at that point the concept of queerness or queer identity, or at the very least like something like bisexuality or just anything that was outside of like traditional like heteronormative kind of behavior and living, that to me for like figures like Gardner, that always seemed to me to be more of a like a performative or like a costume he put on rather than an identity. It's like for him, I think that there was a component of that was significant to the spiritual work that he was doing, like the way he was learning, the way he was growing, and the way he was facilitating his own spiritual processes, but also the beginnings of what would become Wicca, right? Because
I'm not following. Are you saying that this man put on a more like straight persona?
No. I it's been my opinion, and that's all this is. This is just my opinion. But from what I've learned, though there is evidence that Gerald Gardner did or would have been in more contemporary terminology would have been identified as bisexual because he did have some sexual involvement with other men.
Probably.
Because of that, I think for sure he would classified or could be as bisexual. But in the era, in the time that he was in, I don't think that he ever would have taken on that term. I don't think that he ever would have acknowledged that. So for me, I think that his dalliances with bisexuality, again, I think it had a bit more to do with the functional purpose of the work that was being done as it would relate to the spiritual practice and less an issue of true identity for him. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it is what it is, right? I think that was probably the case for many people in past, right? There was that weird dynamic between like, this isn't necessarily what I am, it's just what I do, right? And sometimes it's just what I do in the moment because it's convenient and it feels good, and so I think there's that situation, but I also think that takes us back to earlier eras where the whole thing about like being, there was a period of time there for many years where like it was nobody gave a shit if you were gay or bisexual or lesbian or non-binary or trans. Like nobody gave a shit about that stuff. It was like okay, people are people. Like, hey, it wasn't until we started to see the influences of things like Christianity primarily in Western cultures that we start to see like this rising issue with all the bigotry and the hatred, around just and the lack of value or appreciation and diversity, and the fact that people are sometimes just people. And it's okay for people just to be people, and if they're not hurting you or anyone else, why do you fucking care? Touching back upon the idea you mentioned, Jasper, or not the idea, but just that what you brought up around like non-binary people in particular and Wicca specifically. And I'm not the person really to speak for Wicca, but but if you look at other metaphysical concepts, other things that have been kind of brought into the scope of witchcraft as it's practiced contemporarily, I'm talking about things like hermetics, things like that, these kinds of disciplines or practices, beliefs and traditions. When you look at, and this is something that I see kind of happening and for in modern, in at least in the last several decades, as we've had more and more people coming out and saying like like I'm identifying as non-binary, or I'm identifying as something other than this rigid feminine masculine kind of spectrum that we see, or these polarities that we see, right? As someone who is an occultist and as someone who is not non-binary, you know, I'll be the first to admit, like I'm fairly cis in my behavior and in my appearance, um, you know, and I'm absolutely an ally. You know, we have many like yourself. We have many non-binary friends. We have many trans friends. But when I look at that, I think that the confusion, one of the things that I see happening in the confusion there around ideas like, well, Wicca doesn't really have or allow for these things, or there isn't really a lot of non-binary representation in contemporary paganism or witchcraft. I think the reason for that is that when we look at concepts like divine masculine and divine feminine, or that kind of that polarity that we see there, right, or that we believe exists, I think that as humans we misinterpret or we misunderstand those things. It's not about seeing those things or identifying those things as a strict polarity or a binary. I think that where we look at concepts like divinity and as it relates to masculine and feminine energies in witchcraft specifically, is that it's being able to see that like they're not really separate to begin with. Like there's no polarity to begin with. You know, that's a concept that has been created, you know, in some instances, you know, historically, I think probably for good reasons, right? It was necessary at one point to be able to clearly identify masculine from feminine, particularly as it would relate to the reproduction of humanity, right? Um, but I think that you know, we've gotten to a point now where we need to really be kind of retraining ourselves on that, particularly as it relates to witchcraft, because there really is no binary there. There can't be, you know. And so I think it's not necessarily about being neither, like saying I'm neither. I don't recognize as either masculine or feminine. I don't put my faith or my belief in a divine feminine or a divine masculine. It's not about that. I think it should be more about recognizing that there never really was a binary to begin with, that there's a whole, like there's one energy, one manifesting life form, one intelligence, one consciousness, and it is both what we would traditionally identify as masculine and feminine, because those concepts of masculine and feminine are, we know those are bullshit. Those are bullshit. Those have never really existed.
Well, the concepts of masculine and feminine have even switched and they switch and they change through cultures and cultural socio constructs. And so even when we look at things in that way, we see and we understand that humans are the ones humans are the ones who actually put the label on this is masculine, this is feminine, you know. And I mean, we see it in language. I sucked at German because is the table masculine or feminine?
No, the table is feminine.
Yeah, my soon-to-be husband, Theo, literally said the same thing. He said he struggled learning Spanish because he couldn't get past the gendered language. And it's one of those, like, why can't the table be a table? You know, like, why is it a feminine table or a masculine table? It's like it's a table.
That's changing. Interesting enough, I was reading something the other day, and in not in Spanish speaking countries, but in like Scandinavian countries and Germanic countries, because a lot of people don't realize, but German is also a romantic language or a romance language in origin, at least as it's commonly spoken in the last couple centuries. But in that area of Europe, there's kind of this movement now where younger generations are choosing to do away with the strict masculine feminine binary in their language. So a lot of people now, they're intentionally speaking, they're getting rid of the dare and the das, or the dare and the d, and they're going just with the das. They're going just with the neuter, what would be considered the neuter or the neutral term gender wise in their religion. Like it was really interesting. Like I was reading this the other day and I was like, oh God, you know. And in the process, they have completely changed the language, the way that the language is spoken. And this is kind of creating a big stir in a lot of these areas, a lot of these countries, because you, as is much the case here in our area of the world, right? You've got these younger people, typically younger people, more educated, more well thought out people who actually give a shit about other people, who are trying to make these changes, right? And seeing a need, like we need to do away with these things. right? We need to kind of shift away from this. We need to be more inclusive in our speech. And then, of course, you have all these older generational fuckers who are, fearful of change and unwilling to give anybody else a fair shot at life the way that they typically did, right? Thanks, boomer.
Mm.
Typically, is the mindset, and to all of the boomers or maybe the older generational folks who joined us here for the podcast, please understand, like, I'm not really hating on anybody. I just, but there is some truth to that. There is some truth just in general to the fact that, like, older generational people are, on average, they are less likely to adapt to change. They don't see a need and even become fearful of change,
Mhm.
which is so ridiculous because that's all life fucking is change.
It
So,
it makes no sense to me. I like taking it back to like even just a witchcraft aspect, like our spirits are very capable. God, spirits, whatever you work with, are very capable of not having a gender. In fact, I don't think they have a gender because there's record in traditional witchcraft lore of like the devil, right? You would consider the devil a very masculine individual appearing as a female to his male followers. I use him for the sake of the conversation, but like to his male followers to have sex with them. That way they could consummate that relationship, because like that was a thing. Your fetch mate, your familiar, like these concepts of having sex with them, like the spirit can take whatever form it needs to have in order to have that kind of carnal relation with you, in order to draw close to you, and for people to just be like, oh, I have my familiar and he or they. I'm like my familiar, or I call my familiar by their name. It's like, because that's the name I've given it. We don't need to call the spirits. The only spirits I call by gendered language, at least I try to, are Hecate, because she's taken that very like divine feminine, like the epitome of divine feminine for me.
yeah,
And my ancestors, because like I call them by what they were,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
I mean, maybe Diana too, I guess, but like it's definitely Lucifer is a they them.
Some, for sure, yeah, for sure, where Lucifer is concerned, yeah. Those examples to me, though, that you just gave of Hecate and Diana being, even for you in your practice, definitely being something that, there's a strong feminine presence here. There's a strong feminine identity here. Um, and I agree with you. Like, as I'm discussing those goddesses, I'm always referring to she, her pronouns. I'm always doing that because just traditionally, historically, even in their stories, like that's always, there's always the case made that, like, these are very strong women, right? Very strong feminine energies, right? But again, I think that goes back to maybe something I was saying a moment ago, is that I think that term, when we talk about, feminine, this goddess, the she that is, is Hecate, the she that is Diana. I think that if we look at both of those deities, though, we realize that even though they may be referred to commonly with she, her pronouns, um, but both of them also embody aspects and do things that in human society we consider very masculine.
Mhm.
Like, both of them are warriors, right? Both of them, and I'm saying that now, and I'm thinking, like, you know what? Historically, there have been so many strong, kick-ass women warriors. So even being a warrior is not something that really is based on gender. Um,
Not at all.
but they have these qualities, they have these things about them that you're like, oh, well, this is traditionally a masculine thing. And so again, to me, it comes down to the fact that, like, whether we refer to them as she, whether we refer to them as he, they really they do encapsulate both of those dynamics. They have to because they're fucking gods, you know. Yeah.
Well, and it's one of those things that like they also are there to teach you that, you can't have such strict duality in your, I mean, you can if you really want to, but like you really shouldn't have such strict duality when it comes to your practice, because like we as people who have penises
Wait, do you have penis? It's too early. He's not being playful at all. That's fine. Yeah.
no, do we as people who have penises, we call ourselves witch. Witch was usually like, you think in pop culture and in contemporary society, witch is still very much associated with like a feminine personality. In fact, like one of my favorite podcasts, Old Gods of Appalachia.
Yeah.
Like you're very rarely going to hear about witches that are male presenting. I mean, there are magical practitioners that are male presenting, but to hear somebody get called he, him, but then in the same breath get called a witch is just not something you hear about. So us even calling like us, the three of us calling ourselves witches is very like queer. It's counterculture. And it's one of those things that like we have to reclaim that term. It's like I am a witch. I might not be a female or feminine presenting on some days, but I'm still a witch,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
I mean, on Tuesdays, I don't know. It depends on the day.
I don't know. I think it's an interesting conversation, particularly when you look at the constructs of that exist around gender and gender identity. Because I think that and again, it's good to clarify for maybe some of our saltines, like gender identity and sexuality are
They're not the same
they are
thing.
not the same thing. And I think for many people there still is some confusion around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting to me that we just continue to see these rigid
I mean,
classifications.
the gay community, like let's talk about that real quick. The fact that like I'm non-binary. They them all the way. Do not call me he him or she her. I will punch you in the throat.
Yeah,
I still call myself gay. And people are like, how can you be gay if you're attracted to, if you don't have a gender? It's like, because I fucking like men
yeah.
mostly. I like fucking men too. That's also fun.
Right, there you go.
But
Yeah,
like sexuality is also fluid. Like today, in today's day and age, you'll see a lot more people identifying as like pansexual than you do anything else because it encompasses everybody. It's like any hole is a goal, you know?
yeah, yeah. That's very true. And I think that a bigger issue there, and I think just kind of taking it back down to kind of just the basics of that conversation when it happens is I don't understand these people out there that are like they see someone who identifies as pansexual, or they see someone who identifies as whatever, right, whatever that may be, right, whether it be a sexual thing, a non-binary, a gender identity thing, and they're not really in any capacity, they're not actively involved in that person's life, they're not having sex with that person, right? I guess where I'm going with this is I don't understand these people out there that feel like they have the right to be like the morality police for the world,
Mm.
right? Or that they have the right to really look at what any other adult consensual kind of situation that other people are getting up to, and feel that they should have an opinion in what goes on in that situation, you
I
know
have I have a theory on that, and I think the theory is like let's take like Christians who are very outspoken and use the smokescreen of their faith to say that.
yeah,
I think half the time they're highly jealous. It's purely jealousy because they want to be doing the things that we are doing and have no regard for whether or not it's necessarily right or wrong. Like we're out drinking, smoking, or like, having sex with people if we have that connection with them and not thinking about it. And they are consumed by the thought of it. They're like, oh, like they think about gay sex more than we think about gay sex. Let's be real here.
they do absolutely, yeah.
And it's purely because they want what they can't have, but the beauty is that they can. I would venture to say that if they really wanted to, they can completely change the face of their religion and be open and accepting and be like, we're human. At our core, we're human, and their God designed them to be human. And if he's mad that they're messing up, that means you should probably go. I was having that conversation at work the other day. We were talking because one of my coworkers is a Christian identifying an individual, but he's like very like open-minded and wants to have his mind changed, right?
Okay.
It's very wonderful and refreshing.
So a
And
real Christian.
yeah, a real Christian. And in fact, he's coming to my wedding on Friday. He's like, I would love to be there. I
Okay.
was like, you are an adorable little boy. Anyway, the point is he was asking me questions. He calls me pagan. I don't identify as pagan. Like I have a couple gods that I work with, but I don't really have like a pantheon. Like I think to be pagan, you have to like work with a pantheon, work with like multiple deities, uh, and like have
To be pagan,
yeah,
and worship God,
yeah.
not work with. And though pagans like to say that they work with gods, if you are simply refilling offerings, lighting incense, and saying prayers, you're not working with gods. You have just gone from Sky Daddy of Christianity to Sky Daddy or Sky Mommy, usually Sky Daddy because everyone just goes straight to fucking Norse paganism. And you've just replaced the words. That's literally all you've done. A witch, when we say we're working with gods, it is, I will do this and you will do this. Either way, I'm doing this. So for you to get your good, you got to help me.
Yeah, no, I love to use
That's
the
the difference.
example.
And that's why
I
when
love,
people claim, try and label me as a pagan, I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not pagan. I bow to no one. No one. No one. No.
well, and for the sake of the conversation with my coworker, I was very much like, I'll play the role of a pagan. But
Sometimes
the
it's
point is,
easier.
well, and I told him, I said, the difference between your God versus like any God I would work with or have a relationship with is I don't feel obligated to them. I don't like it's the question I asked you the other night about like I asked Mike a question, Saltines, if like gods and spirits care if we would do what some might call sin. And it isn't like I kind of already knew the answer, but I just wanted to hear what Mike said. And it was very much like we in our, like witchcraft pagan community understand that like our gods don't care because they, when they created us, or watched us come into existence, or however you want to say it. I don't care about cosmology so much, but it's like they see that like the reason they like us so much is because they see themselves in us. They see that like the gods in any pantheon are just as capable of moral failure as we are, which is why they make us so relatable, which is why they desire us even. Like let's take Zeus, he's always fucking,
Yeah.
right? And it's because he has that element that makes him almost like human. I mean, he's still divine,
Yeah.
but he relates to humanity, which is why, like I was explaining to this person, it's like that's why Christ had to become a man.
Mhm.
For that God and that faith, in order to empathize with his followers, he had to become one of his followers
Yeah.
in order to have that experience. And when I explained it to them, oh my God, it was almost like a click in their head. And they're like, well, then why is he even mad at sin? I'm like,
Because
exactly.
because sin is a human concept.
It's a human concept designed to control people.
Exactly. Exactly. I think, and it's an unfortunate thing. I think sin, the concept of sin, when sin is introduced into the old texts, because of course we see the concept of sin being brought into texts that predate the Bible, right? So if we look
Mhm.
at that, and we go back to those older translations, those older texts, um, we see very clearly like that originally there was no concept of sin. I mean, the book of Genesis makes it clear from the beginning. God made the heavens and the earth, God made humanity, God made man and woman, and everything was perfect, right? Is right
Yeah.
there, which means, and the assumption, the assertion that everything was perfect makes it very clear right there that there was nothing like sin that existed. It wasn't until we started to see humans realizing like, oh wow, this is a mechanism that we can employ to keep these people under our thumbs, to keep these people subservient and in a position of power. And even then, when sin was first brought into or incorporated into those texts later on, that the concept of sin that was really something that was based primarily off of what was considered cultural, right? Like in our culture, we don't behave in this way. In our culture, we don't dress this way. In our culture, we don't eat these kinds of foods, right? So that was the origin of sin, right? I mean, back in the day, God, initially, like, you look at sins now, right? Like a big one, murder, right? Like thou shalt not kill. That is a sin. It is a sin to take life. But over the years, how many Christians, how many other religions, how many other crusades have existed where that's all they did is sin by taking other human life, right? So, yeah, so sin is not well, okay, let me clarify this. I'm not going to say sin isn't a real thing. I'm going to say sin as it is preached by contemporary religions, primarily Christian based religions. Sin is not a real thing. It is not a
Hmm.
real thing, which is why we don't concern ourselves with things like that in paganistic practices and in witchcraft, because we're not dealing with human law when we live
Hmm.
and practice in these ways. So,
Well,
yeah.
and it's also just the fact that, like, it's in witchcraft, your morals are your own morals. Like, I might not want to kill somebody, but Austin may want to curse them to death. And honest to God, like, I can't fault him for that. If they deserve it, they deserve it, you
And
know.
that does sound a lot like you.
Austin is
Or
one of the he's got some delicious recipes for some pretty nasty things, and I have to admit, my first curse I ever worked, he was just like a proud papa. He was like, "Oh, you did a little cute thing. How adorable."
Sorry,
Do you
got distracted and was trying to fix something.
I just noticed that one of the brackets that's holding together our coffee table was slipping out, and I was like, "Oh no, no, no!" Sorry.
there's those falls.
Oh,
No.
shit.
Could we take a pause real quick? I have to use the bathroom.
Absolutely, we're just going to take a break.
Okay, 1 second. I can still hear you, but I'll be right back. I hope you.
All right,
All right, we're back
we're
from a
back
break.
from a break. Yes, we had to let dogs in. They were outside in sprinklers, which is not a good combo. And yes, anyway, so I don't know. We've talked a lot about a few things, kind of bringing it back to the topic of our podcast. We had kind of like a little bit of an aside there on the concept of sin, but I think that certainly is a good conversation because there are so many people out there that base their intolerance, their bigotry, and their hatred for LGBTQIA plus people on these ideas of sin, as or how the behavior is sinful. Your identity is sinful because it goes against God, and it's like there really isn't anything in the world that could go against God. Not if your faith is really strong in the God that you're supposed to believe in, because their Christian God, even in Islam, everything is Allah. Everything falls under the umbrella of Allah's consciousness and power. So everything that exists is God. So how could anything that any LGBTQIA plus person is doing, how could anything that they do, anything about them be sinful, inherently
because
sinful? It's the
because
toughest thing.
Chris- Christians like to be mad on God's behalf, honest to
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
They like
Yeah.
that, like, and not just Christians. I mean, we can pick on Christians, but any religion that speaks out against the behavior of another group of people really is just those followers wanting to be mad about something on behalf of, and then throw it. That's the concept of taking God's name in vain, is like
Yeah.
you're being mad about something that he would not be mad about. He is mad about things like, why are you letting people starve? Why are you letting people, like, go homeless? Why are you letting these things happen? Instead, he's like, I don't give a shit about your faggotry. I really don't, according to the Pope.
No. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, it's pretty crazy, but I don't know. We've talked about a few things though, and I do want to make it really clear, just because we know that our audience for the podcast is very diverse. And
Mhm.
we've talked a lot about things like gender identity, and he, him, she, her pronouns, things like that. Non-binary, the spiritual recognition that the concept of a binary is in and of itself really basically just another whole, right? Another singularity, really, right? But I do want to be really clear, just to all of our self teens, if you identify, if you are someone that like you use he, him pronouns, you use she, her pronouns, and you are, a cis gendered kind of person. Like no hate, absolutely. Like there's nothing wrong with identifying as a man and being born male. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being, someone who was, feminine, assigned female at birth, right? There's nothing wrong with being a man or a woman in a traditional sense, right? Whatever that might be, right? And identifying as such, nothing wrong with that. I think that, one of the purposes of some of our discussion was really just to try to, again, kind of shine some light on the fact that there are people out there that feel that they have a right to police these things, or that if you are not a cis hetero identifying man/woman, that you are somehow wrong. And that these concepts are things that really have absolutely no place, no validity in the practice of witchcraft.
You can even be straight. I would even say, like, it's okay to be straight and a witch, or like a male who is straight. However, I would absolutely ask you if you're being a good ally, and I would also ask you what's going on, because if like you're a straight white man, what are you using witchcraft for? Unless you're in the capitalistic hellscape that is America. So maybe I guess that's okay too. But like, just be a good ally. That's really all it is just be a good ally.
That's exactly it. That's it.
And
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's I don't understand people who are allies in like word or deed, yet when we're like at the Palestine protests, protesting the genocide that's happening in Palestine, because Palestinians are being killed in exponentially high numbers, and we need to never stop talking about Palestine.
Yeah.
Palestine. The point is, where are you at? Are you coming to those protests? Are you showing up to events where we're trying to raise our voices? And it's not just the straight folks, it's the LG. I've even calling the LGBT
Yeah.
people out. Don't you have to be a good ally too, because if you're a witch, your job is to protect the people who need protecting. If there's a group of people that has been identified that needs their voice to be amplified, it is your job as a witch to come in and be like, amplify the voice. That's why y'all did the working for the missing Indigenous women. It's the missing and murdered Indigenous women movement, because their voices needed to be heard.
Yeah.
Like there are people all over the world who need there are people all over the world who need to have their voices heard. And if you're not using your practice at all to help amplify those voices, then what are you doing?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, yeah, and that's a huge component, I think, of, you talk about allyship. I think, you are right. There are a lot of people out there who seem to be kind of ally in name only. I think
Allies when it's convenient for them.
that's exactly what it is. I think a lot of people, they, because they, the core of their being, they're not hateful. They do see value in diversity. They want people to be able to live and to be who they are, right? And they, and because of that, they proclaim themselves ally. The problem with that, though, is that when you claim something like that, you have to give further thought into really what that means. Like, that means that when you claim to be an ally, that means that you are an ally through thick or thin, that you are an ally even if shit gets scary and you find yourself on the wrong end of a tear gas grenade or something, right? Like you have to be an ally. If you're going to claim that, you have to be an ally through all that,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately
Like,
be prepared, and hopefully you never have to deal with that. Hopefully you're never beaten down by police at a protest. Hopefully you're never targeted in any capacity by a hate group. But you have to consider those things if you're going to be an ally. It's like, it's in for a penny, in for a pound. Like, you better show up if you're going to claim that. And
although I to tell our protest friends they need to start scheduling protests on days that the majority of us will have off, instead of like Tuesday at noon. I'm like, baby, I can't get off work to come protest, so you got to stop doing this and then being mad at me when I am not showing up to protests.
the good thing about the protests, I find, we're going to one. The Coven is actually going to one in it's next week. We'll be going to one here at the state capitol, and it's a kind of, it's like an anniversary protest for the repeal of Roe v. Wade.
Mm.
And so it's a women's protest, but there will be a lot of men there as well, right? Or male identifying people as well, right? And we're gonna go I'm with you on that one. Like it's a Tuesday afternoon, and I'm like, I have a job, I've got other shit I got to do, but you know what? But you shuffle your life around a little bit, right? You're like this is important to me. I need to do this. Ideally, your boss is someone who is also an ally and cool. And
Mhm.
it's like, oh, hey, if you need to take a couple hours to go do this, okay, great. Make it up on another day, right? I mean, there are ways to work around those things. Um, but I'm with you on that one. I've been to a number of protests over the years where I'm like, could the people who have organized this maybe like you guys have maybe planned this better, like
Literally, and then they're like, "We didn't have large turnout." I'm like, half the people that want to be there are working, girl. Like, come on.
and
Ugh.
a lot of people we don't live in that luxury with the economy being the way it is right now. There are a lot of people that are, I'm sure they're amazing allies, absolutely, but you can't lose your job, right? Like and we don't live in a world right now where anybody really has that kind of job security. So yeah, so it's a
No.
very good point. Yes, to all of you protesters or protest organizers out there, hear this. Like we absolutely we're gonna show up, but you could do us a favor every once in a while by scheduling something maybe on a weekend. Yeah, that
A
would be
weekend or after 5 p.m.
yeah,
That
that
would
would
be
that
great
would be
too.
great. Absolutely, yeah.
I do think though that it is important if you identify as a witch that you should be donating your time to protests. You could donate your money to causes, or you could donate your magic. Like one of the things that Austin and you, Mike, have taught me is never to do witchcraft for other people for free. So if you're going to do your witchcraft towards a cause without getting anything back, that is a donation of that. That is like I'm donating my energy and my supplies to this cause. And sometimes like we're poor. Capitalism fucking sucks, man.
Yeah,
And so like we're poor. So sometimes all I got is I'm gonna light this candle and direct some energy at this thing that I know is happening, and that's perfectly okay.
yeah,
I also want to give a little bit of space to the people who are like myself, who get overwhelmed by the amount of things that are happening and then you just kind of shut down. That is also okay. You need to take care of you first, because at the end of the day, you live with you, and you can't be a million protests deep because there's a million things we could be mad about
oh
and we
yeah,
should be about.
yeah.
But give yourself some grace too. If you missed the protest for Palestine, you can still post on your Facebook that fucking the current administration and every administration fucking sucks for not doing more to stop the genocide. You
Yeah.
can still do stuff like that.
That's true. Yeah, and that most of that stuff is free to do. Yeah. No, I agree with
Yeah.
you completely. I think it's very easy for all of us to feel a sense of overwhelm with all the injustice that we see in our world, and and yeah, and as you said, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You
Mm-mm.
got to yeah, you need to make sure that you have something within yourself to be able to continue to give. Yeah. So all right.
Unless you're that angel from the temperance card. That I don't know where the fuck she's getting all that water from that cup. But good for her. Good for
Angels are
her.
they're they're not ruled entirely by the same physical laws that we are, unfortunately. Um,
I've been on a weird tarot kick lately, so I've been like,
you
which
know,
by the way, I just want to give a shout out to one of your readers, Mia, who is like
yeah,
a tarot expert. Shout out to Mia if she's listening, because let me tell you, when I was listening to the Ask a Witch live the other night,
yeah.
which you all do, the things she was saying, I was like, my God, I would kill to have half of the knowledge that she has.
She that is a pool of knowledge that she has cultivated over several years,
Yeah.
And she is yeah. I think I've worked with a lot of tarot readers, self-proclaimed tarologists, people that are really about that divinatory system, that spiritual tool, whatever you may want to call it. I can honestly say in working with Mia, she puts all of those other people to shame. And she's yeah. That's why we constantly talk her up, and it's because she's the real deal. And that's hard to find these days. It's so unfortunate. Like it's hard to find people really a lot of the time that ultimately are able to live up to what they claim to be. But that's Mia. Like if you want somebody who will give you everything that you need to know about the tarot and more, she's the person to sit with.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing. That's another part to just touch on tarot. Rachel Pollack, who literally wrote the self-proclaimed Bible on tarot, the 78 Degrees of Wisdom, was a trans woman.
Oh, there you
Like,
yeah.
like we are everywhere, y'all. Like the information you're getting is from people in the LGBTQIA community. Like we are everywhere. So get with the fucking program,
Yeah.
especially during Pride Month, okay? Like it's
Yeah,
not just Gemini season, it's fucking Pride Month, okay?
exactly. It's Pride Month. People need to, like, yeah, they need to, yeah, exactly. So, well, I just noticed the time that we're at, but I know that you wanted to revisit our what we're loving and hating.
Oh yes, I love that. That's
So
one of my favorite things from the
let's do
podcast.
it. So let's switch gears. Let's get into that. Yeah, just because I know that we've got to probably stop the recording here in a few minutes, but we got to go open the shop. But so yeah, so along those lines, because we haven't really done a what we're loving or what we're hating in a minute. Um, so I'm gonna turn this over to you. What are you loving and hating, Austin? Unless Jasper, would you like to go first?
I'm gonna let Austin go if he can. I'm so
Okay.
sorry, Austin. Not to
I
put you on the spot.
You're totally on the spot now. You're
Austin is like seeing into the future with how far he stares
he's like
sometimes. He's like,
nothing prepared, like nothing prepared.
What am I loving?
Me,
Mine. What
oh,
am I hating?
me.
Mine.
oh, no, no, no.
No. Um, oh God. I can't really think about anything that I'm really loving. I've kind of been in this weird bitter state as it comes to certain things because I'm so
Mm.
sick and tired of these people who are like, I'm rich. And then all they use is the same three herbs, lavender for protection and luck and it's always the same excuse. Well, I'm on a budget. Cool. A budget doesn't mean that you don't get to Google, you know,
Mm,
doesn't mean that you don't get to go, what are other herbs for protection? That's also something that so let me see. I'm trying to find something that I love.
me. Wow. Okay.
I can't
Well,
think of
there's no love
anything.
in you. No,
I
no, no
can't
love in
think
you
of
at
anything.
all.
I will tell you this, something that I am vehemently hating
Oh God.
is the fact that instead of people doing personal work, they're just jumping right to painful work. And it really is bothering me. I can't tell you how many times I've had to check personal students and friends of mine and say like, so how you want to just like fuck this person up? Like that's great. And if that's what you want to do, go for it. But also you do realize that like you're at fault, right? Like you're at fault. Like I'm hating the double standards that I'm seeing in a lot of practitioners. There's this double standard of, oh, well, I work for the community. I am so good at this. Meanwhile, this person's also going out buying several designer bags and just like fucking off. And it's like, okay, well, where are you in the community? And it comes back to, well, I deserve this. No, you don't fucking deserve anything.
Yeah, no, yeah. Nobody really deserves.
No one deserves anything. As Abby Lee Miller of Dance Moms would say, you deserve nothing. So it's this weird thing where I've seen that, I love that witchcraft empowers people, but then you have people who have either been so disempowered through their life that then reach a level of privilege where they are empowered, but they're still feeling disempowered because they have not done any real healing work. Going and seeing a therapist is just part of it. You actually have to sit and do the homework your fucking therapist gives you. If your therapist isn't giving you homework, you have a shitty therapist and you need to find a new one. If your therapist isn't saying, well, I can see where you're feeling these things. Can we go deeper on that? Or do we just put surface level and continue this poor me thing? If your therapist isn't encouraging you to heal, you're not doing personal work. At that point, you might as well just be a fucking Instagram, TikTok witch. If you're not doing any form of personal work, you're not actually opening your eyes and widening your window of self-perception when someone goes, this is what you do, this is what you have been doing, and your response is, well, I just don't see that. You're right, you don't see it, which is the problem. So that's what I'm loving and hating. I love that witchcraft is empowering. I hate that people are now taking that empowerment and using it as a spiritual bypass. They're using it as, well, I'm a witch, so I can do what I want. That's great. No, the fuck you can't. Because it all first starts with you. If you cannot actually do the work to study and learn your fucking correspondences, heal yourself, if you can't do that, you have no business being a witch. Go back to church, go back to being a fucking pagan, and leave the real witchcraft to the people who actually want to do it. Witchcraft to the people who can look at themselves in the mirror and go, wow, I have these fucked up issues I should work on. Guess I better start. Instead of going, wow, I have these fucked up issues. This problem not.
I hate that shit.
Wow, mean.
So anyway, there. I've had
Thanks for keeping it constructive. Okay.
I think it's constructive. And if you are one of those people who's like, do I do that? If you have to ask the question if you do it, yeah, you do fucking do that. You do fucking do that. Someone who has a window of self-perception enough to go, yeah, no, I fucking need to grow and I need to heal. That's great. Do the work. Do the work.
Scout's little head in the middle there. Hi, buddy.
He's like, Papa sounds angry.
Yes, you do. You sound really mad right now.
Sounds like
He's like, hey, I just want to lay my head down. I don't know. Let me give you some loving right now.
Papa.
Aww.
Oh.
Y'all are making me want another small dog. Ugh.
Yeah, so what about you, Jasper? What are you loving and hating right now?
Mine is a little bit of a pivot. I love that but it is like a love and on the same token I hate. I love that people are choosing to work with like more of just like one god or goddess instead of like trying to work with multiple, like really focusing on a relationship with one, but at the same time I really hate that I see a lot of people not doing the research into that particular god or goddess. And so you get people that are like trying to make like, no, this is probably a bad example, but like Hecate is like a big bosomed mama. And it's like, no, like she's the mother that tells you to do the shit that you need to do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I love that they're like at least not trying to be like, I work with Odin and I work with Papa Legba and I work with Hecate and I work with Diana and I work with Lucifer, but the Christian Lucifer, not the Roman Lucifer, Christian Lucifer, so like the devil. And then Lilith, and I'm like, y'all have no relationship to any of those gods or goddesses, and shame on you for you. I'm very against using any deity's name in vain.
Yeah.
Like how, Mike, well, and Austin too, but you and I like really, like, we don't, I can't say that. I just remember you saying one time that you like do a lot of work in Hecate's name, in her name, right? I'm the same way. I very rarely am like, Hecate, I'm gonna need some help on this. It's usually like if it's a divination, maybe I'm like, hey, could I get some clarity here? But it's hey, I'm doing magic, and you as the goddess of magic, my power might be in me, but it still comes from you in some way too. So I'm gonna like, this is done in your name. And if I were to then go around and be like, you know what? Hecate is, the goddess of, love. and we should use her in love magic.
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe you could invoke Hecate in a love spell. I wouldn't. But it's like when you try to make these deities something they're not, that I have a real big problem with it because like you're discounting, you're valuing your UPG over like historical evidence that has been tried and tested for hundreds and sometimes thousands of years.
Yeah.
Like like Hecate does not want brownies on Daipanon.
Hmm?
Like she does not want brownies. Like why are we trying to leave out all these candies and cakes for her? Like why is it so hard to just not leave a meal that is like traditional for her? Why do you have to go extra and be like, Hecate told me she likes cosmic brownies. I'm like, you like cosmic brownies. And so if she's telling you anything, it's give me one of those brownies because you love it and I want it because
Yeah.
that's what you love.
That's exactly
It's a
it.
sacrifice.
Yeah, it's the element of sacrifice.
It's instead of having a
Mhm.
brownie with me, how about you just don't eat that brownie
Yeah.
and give it to me?
Because that's one less thing that you don't need to put in your body because it's destroying your body. And I actually value your body. And that's something I do believe Hecate does, or any god. I think they value humanity in such a way that's like, I would like you to drink water instead of soda, please, as I
Yeah.
drink my Dr. Pepper. It's like I hate people that like it's the same thing rehashed and rewashed. I'm having coffee with my deities. It's like I have coffee with my spirits in the morning, but that's just I'm sitting here drinking my coffee and I'm communing with them. I'm
Yeah.
talking. I'm like, hey, this is what the plan is for the day. What do y'all got going on? As weird as that sounds, I ask my spirits what they're doing because they're doing shit too.
All the
They're
time.
not
Yeah. Yeah.
hovering around me, going, all right, Jasper, do you need us right now? Okay, we're going to go do our thing. It's like, no, I'm doing this. What are you doing? Okay, you're going to go and orchestrate cosmic events. Cool. All
Mhm.
right, if I need you, I'll holler.
Yep.
All right, Mike, it's your turn. What are you loving and what are you hating?
Oh God. So real quick, I'm loving because I've been less and less on the good old TikTok these days. And I'm finding that's better for me. Not that TikTok was ever an issue for me, but TikTok, particularly when you look at the kinds of things that I'm getting on TikTok, that all three of us, I'm sure, are getting on TikTok for, conversations around witchcraft, looking for information, looking for ways to connect with other practitioners around the world, right? And I I had to get off of it because there's just so much bullshittery and nonsense that goes on. And anyway, so I got onto TikTok, I think, for probably like the first time yesterday in a long time. Um, and I guess what I mean by that is I got on there and I was actually like looking through like my feed, like checking in with other people I follow, things like that. And I one of the things I'm loving is I've noticed just in checking in just the last couple of days that a lot of the perspective of a lot of that nonsense and stuff. Like I remember like even just a year ago, like there was consistent drama on Witch Talk, all these people, you know, fighting about who's wrong about this or who's right about this and all that stuff. And now I'm noticing more and more that like people are on there and like it's kind of just become like it's funny. Like people are kind of taking a lot of that difference and a lot of that drama and a lot of that bullshit. Like they're taking a lot of that like less seriously, you know. So at least that's my perception because that was what I was noticing. Like there I was getting in and there was like this drama, and I'm using TikTok primarily as a focus, or as an example rather for something that happens in the broader witchcraft community. I'm noticing lately, at least in some of the circles that I'm in, that these discussions and these debates, these things that would be nasty fights and disagreements about who was wrong, who was right, who did this better, who's more powerful, these things, that people are actually taking those things less seriously now. Like there are more people out there now that are like, it doesn't really fucking matter who did this right or who did this wrong because those are such subjective qualifiers for this, and it doesn't matter who claims to be more powerful because at the end of the day, power means nothing unless you use it responsibly.
Power
Like
means nothing if you don't know how to use
yeah,
it.
exactly. Yeah, if you have not cultivated wisdom and responsibility with your building of power, you still have nothing. And
Mhm.
and so I'm noticing that like there's less pressure, there's less energy being put behind the drama. And when these things do pop up, most of the people involved are kind of like, this is really stupid, and I'm just going to turn the channel, you know, because I have more important things to do with my time. So I'm loving that, because we need to continue to get further and further away from these elements, from these people who infiltrate our community as witches, who infiltrate, I should say, who infiltrate the witchcraft community, who are most of the time liars. They're not what they claim to be. They're all about the drama, you know. They're not really about sharing anything that really is of value, because everything has to be about them anyway.
Jar spell.
You know,
Jar spell.
I'm loving
Jar
that
spell.
more and more people are waking up and seeing that for what it really is. And quickly,
This is
what?
my jar.
Yeah.
This is the jar that I hold all of my intentions in, but I'm gonna keep it locked away so it can never open up and breathe, because then the spell's released and I can't have that. Fucking jar spell. Anyway, what are you hating?
That's exactly
Jar
what these
spell.
that's exactly what these people are doing with their jar spells. Is like, this is my spell, and oh, now I'm gonna seal it all away. Yeah, it's funny to me. What I'm hating, and this is a really serious one, and I don't want to end our episode on kind of a bummer note, but over the last year here, one of the things that I think has driven Austin the craziest in our area, and the thing is that this isn't just in our area. This happens everywhere, unfortunately. But in the last year, we've had someone who is, I would say, fairly well known in the local witchcraft community here. We've had someone who has been, um, like, it has become known that this is someone who is a sexual predator.
Mhm.
And I mean, and multiple people. I'm not just talking like one reported incident. Like, we're talking like over like 20 people now have come forward and have said, yeah, this person did this to me, and he said this to me, and and I guess where I'm going with this is like, because of some past affiliation that we had with this individual, as these
Mhm.
situations have come up, you know, no more. As soon as all this became clear, it was like, oh no, you are dead to us. No, 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 no. But as soon as these things started to become clear, when it became when it was when we discovered that this person was still actively trying to work within the witchcraft community and marketing themselves in the way that they were when we were familiar with them, right, and involved with them, um, I kind of felt a sense of responsibility there, and I made some calls. You know, I wasn't trying to stir trouble. You know, my whole intent in this, behind this, was basically just to make sure that other people were aware that this was the case, and that this was somebody that they really probably needed to not be involving themselves with, because this was this person's pattern of behavior, and this is like what was going on, right? Why create a situation where, for this person, where they could continue to harm people, in essence, right? So what happened with all that, I guess, basically is I contacted and I spoke with a few other like metaphysical shop owners in the area that I found out this person was now reading at, or working for, or you know, just connecting with them in some capacity, and told them like, this is what's gone on, you know, without giving them too many specifics, right? This is what's gone on. We have like over 20 women now who have stepped forward and have said, this was what happened. This is what's going on. You know, this is not an isolated incident, and none of these women are connected. This isn't some kind of weird conspiracy or a witch hunt, right? Like, this is happening. This person is doing this to people. And I think where I'm going back to like what I'm hating is, in each of those conversations, that person that I was trying to talk to about this, that I was talking to, that I was trying to warn, like, you probably don't want this person in your store. You probably don't want this person leading your public rituals. You probably don't want to be working with this person in any capacity that would give them exposure to hurt other people, right? And these were women. These were women I'm talking to, having this discussion, which I guess on some level, I always think women will be more compassionate, women will be more concerned, women will care more about the reality that other women are being victimized. But I've learned in the last year that that is indeed not the case, because in each of those conversations, the response I got back from the woman, the other shop owner in that conversation, was, that has nothing to do with me. I don't want to be involved. I don't care. And until there's a problem in my store, until I see him actually doing this to someone else, I'm not going to worry about it. You know, and so I'm hating that within the witchcraft community, that a community that we are supposed to be healers, we are supposed to be teachers, we are supposed to be wardens of our planet, we are supposed to certainly be like pro-feminism, anti any like predatory kinds of behavior, right? Like we're supposed to actively be against these things and working consistently to remove these things when they do pop up in the community. And I'm hating that I'm now finding myself having to interact with and feeling that I'm part of the same community with people who really just clearly just don't give a shit that there is a sexual predator, that there is a monster within our local community. They don't care. They don't care. And so I'm really hating that. And it's forced me, unfortunately, in the last few weeks to have to make some really hard decisions around the people affiliated with some of the other local witchcraft shops in our area. That it's forced me to make some really hard decisions around the continued involvement or communication that I'll have with these people. It's very disheartening because we've worked so hard in this area to build community, to build connection. Like we go to these other shops intentionally to go in and say, hi, we're your neighbor. Hi, how are you doing? How is your business? Like we're all in this together, we're a community, right? And then to have an experience like this it's just been like just a huge slap in the face. And so it's very hard. Once again, in the last little while, I've had experiences that have reminded me that there really is no such thing as a witchcraft community. There really isn't. It doesn't exist because we have people like this out there. We have sexual predators, these kinds of awful people who infiltrate our community. And then we have people who turn a blind eye, willfully turn a blind eye and ignore their behavior. And so that's what I'm hating. I'm hating. And to all the people who are watching this right now, I'm going to say, don't be that person. If you learn that someone in your community is a sexual predator, if you learn that someone is claiming to be something that they are not, and therefore using the position that they've stolen to harm people, if you learn of these things, and I'm not talking gossip bullshit. I'm talking like there's evidence, like this is a real thing. This happened, right? And you learn of these things, it is absolutely your responsibility to work to shun that person, to remove that person, particularly if they are continuing that behavior.
Yeah.
I'm very disgusted right now with a lot of our contemporaries in the local area here.
It goes back to what Austin was saying, though. You have to be willing to do the work to change. If it was one of those things where this individual was like, oh my God, I did some terrible things, I'm removing myself,
Yeah.
kind of a thing, I would probably chase after that person and be like, wow, you're trying to learn from the error of your ways. It's the fact that they're not,
Yeah.
and that they continue to perpetuate the behavior that makes them the monster. And I hate that. I hate that more than I can. I'm all
This person, the predator in this situation, this person is so disgusting. Not only what they're doing is disgusting, but this person is so awful that when it came out, when it became clear that other people knew what they were up to, they actively worked baneful magic on all of the women who had stepped forward.
sounds like a real greaseball.
Yeah, for sure, a real greaseball. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just, like I said, and as far as he in particular is concerned, like, I mean, he's awful. If I read tomorrow that he died, I would not shed a single tear. But
Go piss on the grave.
but my big concern, and again, going back to what I said I was hating, is I am so angry. I am so angry that these other women in the community here that are claiming to be community elders, right? They're teachers, they're healers, all the crap that they're claiming to be, which I now understand is all bullshit, right? That I'm hurt and I'm angry and I'm hating that they would willfully turn a blind eye, that they would allow a monster into their space And then when evidence became clear that this person was indeed a monster, they would go, not my problem, doesn't affect me.
That's what makes y'all shop different from the other shops, is that you have always valued ethics and morals and being ethical practitioners. You talk more about being an ethical practitioner than I think you talk about anything else on the topic of, or any podcast.
Yeah.
And when you find someone who is not an ethical practitioner, it makes it that it's like that much of a stark difference. The fact that like when you found out, you immediately acted speaks more to the practices in your shop than it does anything else. And the fact that these other people are not, I would not go to anywhere but Cat and Cauldron if I were in Utah,
It's,
honest to, or at least Salt Lake City, you know? Like that's it, and that's not to plug your shop. It's just like this person over here is trying to actively protect the community. This person doesn't give a shit. That's an easy choice, you know?
yeah, you would think it would be. It's hard that to be an ethical, and this is, I'm not saying this about us, I'm just saying just in general, anybody out there, to be an ethical practitioner, to be an honest business person, to bring those kinds of values to you, the way you run your business. It's hard. It is hard. And when I say it's hard, I don't mean that it's difficult to do that as a person, because if that's who you are, it's going to be easy for you to do that and to be that way. But to run a business with those kinds of, you know, if that's your platform, it's hard because we don't live in a world that values ethics. We do not live in a society that values honesty, you know, and it's hard. It's difficult, you know, trying to convey to people that, like, you know, you come to this store and you buy your thing, you know, and you interact with their employees. But a huge component of being a consumer, a responsible consumer, is to do your research and make sure that this company is actually not a garbage company, you know, that they're actively, like, you know, that they stand for something good, that, you know, that they're doing good work, that they care about people, that they care about the environment, that they're actively fighting crime, you know, that they're not continuing to employ and put a sexual predator in a prominent position in the community where he continues to be able to have his pick of victims. You know, I mean, like, so it's difficult. Like, there are moments, like, I have darker moments, right, where I'm like, God, how nice would it be just to be able each month to worry about the dollars coming into the store? Like, how much easier would my life be if I could really just focus on the money that people are giving me, you know? But I'm not that person, and it sucks some days because I'm like, God, I really wish sometimes I didn't care so fucking much. You know, it would be easier not to be so ethical. Um,
It it would, but I think that would make our business not the greatest. I mean,
for sure. Oh,
let
absolutely.
me I have been trying to start my own little witchcrafty business ventures, and I
Yeah.
can tell you that it is harder than people realize if you have a set of morals and ethics. If you didn't, it would probably be great because like just being here in Buffalo, I was listening to people tell me about like how this person, they're convinced this person was putting work on them so that they would come back. And then when I did some divination, it was like that is exactly what is happening.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could just stop it right now if you want. And they're like, no, I don't know about all that because like, you know, I like them and they're good
Oh
people
God.
at their like they're literally laying work on you to keep you coming back. And I could just stop that. And then you don't have to keep spending $80, $90 a session with this person. Whereas, you know, like you could do one session with me for 45 bucks and I could get it done. Or you could do $80, $90 and continuously keep going and spending that money. At this point, like it's like how am I supposed to be okay with people? Come on.
Yep.
Oh
Yeah.
God.
It is. It's difficult. It's very disheartening being a witch and trying to do that professionally in the community that we have now, because the community is just full of con artists and liars, and you know, and again, and unfortunately a lot of legitimate practitioners who really just they just don't give a shit. At the end of the day, it's all about gratifying their ego and putting money in their bank account, you know. And so it's hard. It is a hard, this is becoming a it's always been hard for different reasons, but for those reasons now, it sucks to be a professional witch.
It really does.
Yeah.
Although if you want to come and contact me, you can find me at the Witch by the Lake, all lowercase, on Instagram.
There you go. Yes, yes. The Witch by the Lake, all lowercase on Instagram. There you go.
Yes, no, but I just want to say thank you again for letting me be on the podcast, because I always enjoy coming on, and y'all let me speak on things and enjoy hearing what I have to say. It is truly a bye, Austin. See you later.
He's having an ADHD morning, I think. He's being distracted by dogs.
Hey, I also am having an ADHD morning, and I keep getting distracted by my candle burning.
Well,
But
you're I think we're kind of at a good stopping point for the episode. So and we know you got lots of other important stuff going on. So
oh yeah, this is a big week. Yes, I got to go get my nails did now.
there you go. There you go. Yeah. That's good. That's good.
All right. Well,
So so we'll wrap it. We'll call this an episode, but yeah, Jasper, thank you so much for joining us again, and we'll have you on again at some point in the future, and we can check in and see what's going on. You can let us know what life is like now. Your state of married bliss is like now. So
yes. Look at that. Isn't that interesting? Did you see that? Hold on.
It's in the program. It does this sometimes too. Like we do, like if you do like a thumbs up or you say something, like it'll get like a little thumbs up emoji.
Oh, there you go.
Balloons,
Oh,
there
look
you
at that.
Yes, it'll do this to us at weird times though. Oh, so it's a peace sign. That's what does the balloons. Okay. I wasn't sure. Okay. Yeah, it's the weirdest thing. It'll do this like a few episodes now. We'll be talking about something really heavy, like something really difficult, and then it's like balloons, and it's like
Yeah, you had you had that with your Baphomet episode, or Baphomet, because we were talking about, like, the as above, so below,
yeah,
but you had the fingers together, and it was like peace. And
there you go. There you go.
Okay.
We figured it out. We hacked the system.
We hacked the system. Now we know. That tells me though there's got to be other things that we haven't. We should just start doing just random things on them.
I mean, I wonder what this will do. Oh, not a damn thing. It's just like that.
Oh, there you go.
No flipping people.
We'll try other things, like I don't know, like fist bump. I don't know.
Fist bump. Nope, no, nothing. Okay, nothing.
That's okay. We'll keep working. There must be a website somewhere that has like, oh yes, this application will do these things. Here's what it can do. Maybe we'll have to Google that. So,
there's a website for everything. But thank you again for having me on.
Yeah, no worries, right. Have a good day. Okay, we'll be talking to you soon, I'm sure. And yeah, and congratulations once again.
Yes,
Yes,
congrats.
thank you. We'll see you soon.
All right, sounds good.
All right, bye.